Joseph? Woo! Rochelle, son. White boy killed my cousin Joseph. That's what they got me set up in Butler County. You done killed my mother cousin. You killed my cousin Joseph.
Yeah, Deb, the KBI originally thought Ronald Williams Sr. killed Kelly George and their 4 children before turning the gun on himself. It now says its investigation has found that the pair planned the killing of their children together, that both of their behavior was increasingly erratic, and that the gun used in the murders belonged to Kelly George.
6 people, 1 house, and a plan that investigators say was set in motion more than a year before anyone pulled the trigger. This isn't a story about a man who snapped. It's a story about 2 parents who didn't. If you value investigations like this one, take a second to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Real True Crime Analysis with notifications on. Cases like this deserve real attention, and your support helps this channel keep digging into the stories that matter. Now, let's get into what happened in Winfield, Kansas. It was just before 9 in the morning on August 11th, 2026, in the small town of Winfield, Kansas. Police officers were already in the neighborhood working an unrelated call when a 911 dispatcher relayed a chilling message. A man on the line said he had just killed his entire family and that he was about to kill himself too. That man was 53-year-old Ronald Williams Sr. Officers who were nearby rushed to a home in the 400 block of West 9th Avenue. As they approached, they were warned the man inside was known to be armed and considered dangerous. Almost immediately after arriving, the first officer on scene heard a single gunshot come from inside the house. For nearly 2 hours, police held a perimeter around the home. Negotiators tried repeatedly to make contact. There was no response. Finally, close to 11 that morning, officers made the decision to breach the front door. What they found inside would shake not just this small Kansas town, but the entire state. 6 people were dead. Ronald Williams Sr., 44-year-old Kelly George, the mother of his children, and 4 children, all under the age of 10. 9-year-old Carol Williams, 7-year-old Ronald Williams Jr., 5-year-old Sarah Williams, and 3-year-old Kelly McGee Williams. Investigators believe Williams shot the other 5 family members before making that final phone call, then turned the gun on himself as police arrived outside. Winfield is not a big city. It's the kind of place where, as one longtime resident later put it, you can meet a stranger at a gas station and leave knowing their name. A place like that doesn't experience something like this often. The police chief, a man with more than 2 decades on the job, said afterward that he had never seen anything like it in his career. But almost immediately, a difficult question started circulating through the community. How does something like this happen without warning? And the more investigators dug into Ronald Williams's past, the more that question demanded an answer. Because Ronald Williams was not a stranger to law enforcement. Not even close. Court records reviewed by journalists revealed a criminal history stretching back nearly 3 decades. In 1998, Williams was convicted of attempted indecent liberties with a child, an offense involving a 15-year-old girl that occurred back in 1997, when he was in his 20s. That conviction placed him on Kansas's registered sex offender list for life. That wasn't the only mark on his record. Between 1995 and 2024, Williams faced felony charges across multiple counties in eastern Kansas: battery, assault on a law enforcement officer, burglary, attempted rape, kidnapping, drug offenses. He served time in at least 3 separate prison stints across 4 different state correctional facilities. Court documents from 2005 even described an incident where he allegedly locked a woman inside his home and threatened to beat her if she tried to leave. He had also used multiple aliases over the years: Freddie Williams, LaRon Williams, Jerome Williams, names that surfaced in different counties, different case files, different points in his life. So here's a man with a documented history of violence, a registered sex offender with felony convictions spanning decades, living quietly in a small Kansas town with a wife and 4 young children. Does that detail unsettle you as much as it unsettled investigators once they started piecing it together? And it wasn't just old history. In the weeks leading up to the killings, Winfield police had already been dealing with Williams directly. The chief later confirmed his department had responded to reports of erratic behavior. Williams confronting people, yelling at strangers on the street. One neighbor described him shouting at her, at his own family, and at people simply walking by, almost on a daily basis. She said she rarely saw the children outside at all. That same neighbor recalled a disturbing encounter involving a UPS driver. She said Williams ran toward the delivery truck, retrieved something, and approached the driver aggressively enough that the man put his hands up and later called police to report Williams had a weapon. Then there was an incident just 2 months before the killings. According to reporting from a local outlet, Williams reportedly threatened to get a gun and shoot people inside a Kansas child welfare office, an incident serious enough to trigger a building lockdown. He was banned from the property and told to leave. He complied, but the report apparently never made its way back to Winfield police in a way that connected the dots. In total, the police chief revealed that officers had responded to the Williams home more than 20 times over the years. 20 separate calls, for various reasons, some from neighbors, some from the family itself. That number alone raises a haunting question. With that many contacts, that much documented instability, how did nobody see this coming? Or did someone see pieces of it, without ever getting the full picture? When the shooting first made headlines, the story seemed devastatingly simple. A violent man with a long criminal history had finally snapped, killing his wife and children before ending his own life. It fit a pattern investigators and the public have unfortunately seen before. But just days later, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation released an update that changed the entire understanding of this case. Investigators announced they did not believe an argument or physical altercation had preceded the killings that morning. There was no fight, no sudden explosion of rage that triggered the violence. Instead, the evidence pointed somewhere far more disturbing. According to the KBI, Ronald Williams Sr. and Kelly George had jointly shared culpability for premeditated plans to kill their children and then themselves. Read that again. Not a solo act of violence from a man with a documented history of aggression. A shared plan between both parents. This finding transformed Kelly George's role in the public narrative overnight. She had been mourned as a victim, a mother caught in her husband's violence alongside her children. Now investigators were saying she may have been a willing participant in planning the deaths of her own kids. One piece of evidence anchored this conclusion. Investigators found documentation showing that George herself had purchased a Taurus .38 special revolver back in February of 2025, well over a year before the killings. That same revolver was the weapon recovered at the scene, not Williams's gun. Hers. Why would a mother buy a firearm more than a year in advance, only for it to become the weapon used to kill her family? Investigators haven't publicly detailed every piece of evidence behind their conclusion, but that purchase and its direct link to the murder weapon was central to changing how they viewed her role. The KBI also revealed that both Williams and George had displayed what officials called erratic behavior in the time leading up to the shootings. Officials described a pattern of nonsensical statements made to law enforcement, to neighbors, and to others in the community. Not from one parent, from both. This detail complicates a story that already felt hard to comprehend. Was this a case of shared delusion between two people isolating together, reinforcing each other's distorted thinking? Was one parent influencing the other toward this plan? Or were both independently reaching the same devastating conclusion, for reasons investigators may never fully uncover? These remain open questions, not established facts, and the KBI has been careful not to speculate publicly on motive. What we do know is that authorities stated clearly there is no evidence anyone beyond Williams and George was involved. No third party, no outside influence they've identified. Just two parents and a plan investigators say was made together. For the Winfield police chief, this revelation added a new layer of confusion to an already devastating case. He admitted that the initial assumption that some kind of violent altercation had triggered the tragedy no longer matched what investigators were finding. If that early theory was wrong, he said, It left him with more questions than answers. And for the community, the shift in blame was almost impossible to process. People who had grieved Kelly George as an innocent victim now had to reconsider everything they thought they understood about what happened inside that house. Does this change how you see the case? Because it changed everything for the people of Winfield. There's another layer to this story that deserves attention, because it raises questions that go beyond just one family. How did Ronald Williams, a convicted felon with a criminal record including attempted rape and aggravated assault, have any connection to a firearm at all? Neighbors were quick to ask this exact question once his history became public. Under federal law, convicted felons are generally prohibited from possessing firearms. Yet the KBI's findings suggest the gun used in the killings was legally purchased by Kelly George, not Williams. That detail may explain part of the legal picture, but it doesn't erase the unease many in the community felt learning a man with his background was living in a home where a firearm was present at all. It also raises a broader question the state of Kansas has wrestled with before. Kansas currently has no law requiring firearms to be securely stored, even in homes with children. Advocacy groups have pushed for legislation on this front for years, without success. Whether stronger storage requirements would have changed anything in this specific case is impossible to know. But the conversation resurfaces every time a tragedy like this happens. Then there's the matter of the 20-plus police contacts with this family. Neighbors have said they made repeated calls over the years, worried about what they were seeing. The department's own chief has acknowledged the volume of contact. And yet, despite all of it, nothing in the record apparently rose to the level that would have allowed authorities to intervene in a way that prevented this outcome. This is one of the hardest truths in cases like this one. Warning signs, even when reported, even when documented across dozens of calls, don't always translate into an intervention that can stop tragedy before it happens. Should more have been done? Could a different response, at any one of those 20-plus contacts, have changed the outcome? These are questions the community is still asking, and they may never have a satisfying answer. The 2-month-old incident at the Department for Children and Families adds another troubling piece. If Williams truly threatened to bring a weapon to that building, and that threat triggered a lockdown, it suggests a level of danger that was recognized by at least one agency. Yet that information reportedly never made its way to Winfield police in a way that connected to the pattern they were already seeing. Was this a communication breakdown between agencies? Was it simply that no single report seemed severe enough on its own? We don't know for certain, and it would be unfair to assign blame without more information. But it's a detail that deserves scrutiny as this case continues to be examined. In the aftermath, the Winfield community turned toward each other. A local church organized a prayer vigil, drawing grieving residents together in a moment the pastor called one of the most devastating his town had ever experienced. Donations poured in from people as far away as California and Texas, supporting funeral and memorial costs for a family many had never met. 2 of the children had attended local schools, and counselors were made available to students trying to process what happened to their classmates. As of now, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation has said the case remains open. When it concludes, their findings will be handed over to the Cowley County Attorney. Because both Williams and George are deceased, no criminal charges will ever be filed against either of them. The public may never get a courtroom accounting of exactly what happened inside that house, or why. So where does that leave us? We know a family of 6 is gone. We know Ronald Williams had a documented history of violence stretching back decades, and that both he and Kelly George showed signs of erratic behavior investigators say ended in a shared, premeditated plan. We know a firearm purchased over a year in advance became the weapon used in the killings. And we know a community made more than 20 calls over the years without ever fully grasping what was building behind closed doors. What we don't know may be just as important. We don't know exactly why 2 parents would plan something like this together. We don't know precisely what evidence beyond the firearm purchase led investigators to implicate George as a co-conspirator rather than a victim. And we don't know whether earlier intervention at any point along that long documented history could have changed what happened on August 11th. What do you think really happened inside that home in the months and years leading up to this tragedy? Do you believe agencies could have connected the warning signs sooner? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Cases like this deserve honest, thoughtful discussion, not speculation dressed up as certainty. If you found this analysis informative, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Real True Crime Analysis, and turn on notifications so you never miss another investigation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.